Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so delighted that you're joining me today. And I have to say that I'm literally just lit up with joy. I got beautiful news just before I came on the live about a client. Of course, I'm not going to disclose any personal information, but I got news of a really beautiful love story that I've been kind of working with this person, supporting them in making this dream a reality. And, sometimes we just have to hang in the uncertainty and it feels like forever. And this is one of those times where I'm noticing like the cards are so amazing for supporting us in sticking in that high frequency, going for the best options, the ideal options for our lives, and how it helps us to trust and stick through sometimes months and maybe even years of uncertainty. So I'm just so delighted. I literally was just crying. I had to wipe some tears away. So love is in the air, and love does really conquer everything. And that's what we're starting with today is love, this beautiful frequency of love. Hello, Ricky. Hello, complicated alien. Well, it's interesting. Love is one of those things that is not super complicated. It might feel complicated. So there's no mistakes. I always treat these things that happen, just before we come on lives, for example, as kind of divine timing. And there's something in this message. This is why I'm sharing it with you. There's something in this that's relative for all of us, that's really significant for all of us. So, yay. Hello, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Love is in the air. And let's go where you would like to go. We've set the tone with this energy of the miraculous potentiality and how love really does conquer all. Let's see where we want to go from there. Good morning, Ricky. Do you have any questions? What does love mean to you? Maybe I'm just going to pull some cards for all of us around what do we need to know about love. And when I talk about love, I'm referring to all the different types of love, obviously. And one of the things that I've always declared about romantic, emotionally and physically intimate love and partnership, what makes it so extraordinary, similar to friendship, to very, very special friendship, these relationships are what we choose. They're the place where we have choice. And the Lover's card, which is the sixth card in the major arcana, actually connects to our power of choice and how, really around the age of 6, 5 or 6 is when we make our first independent choice about our hearts and our heart's desire. A lot of times that's when we find our first best friend. And that energy of choosing someone that's special to you is something that no one else can really interfere with. I mean, there's been a lot of machinations over the eons of people being forced to choose and marry people that they didn't love or had to have that very strong spiritual connection with. But we all know that what we choose with our hearts, for better or for worse, whether it's good for us or not, it is one of those most sovereign, sacred rights that we have as humans, is to choose with our hearts and to choose whose love we would like to reciprocate. It's a very, very powerful thing. And it's a very mysterious thing. When I'm teaching the tarot and working with people around, different spreads that we use to look at love and relationships. And I always say that when we enter into inquiry about love and relationship, to me, it is the most sacred territory, the most mysterious territory, that is hard to solve with the rational mind. And let's see what the cards want to share with us today about love. And where do we go from here? Okay, so here we have the Magician, which is activation, and it's also, up leveling. So there's something we're being pointed to in order to really evolve and grow as a human species, as a human collective. Repairing our loving, intimate relationships is a necessary, almost like essential step. The Magician is basically a yes card. It's a big activator. It's a big setting an intention, setting a tone, and feeling encouraged, feeling confident. Okay, what do we need to know about love, intimate partnership? Boy, everybody's being super quiet here. It's like we can talk about every topic that's so challenging or so way out there, but when it comes to talking about love, it's like crickets. Okay, so what do we need to know about it? This is the opportunity for growth. 3 of Wands is the Explorer card. So exploring new territory, new ground, it's boldly going where beings haven't gone before, because we're going to be seeing an entirely new type of relationships emerging over this next 3 or 4 years. It's part of the package. It's part of the package of up leveling is the relationship styles. I want to say the agreements that we're making, how we're designing relationships in New Earth with this up leveling frequency. It's something that's never been done before. So we don't know how to do it. And the mind is not going to know. The heart is going to move in the direction of exploring. And it is, just like going on a journey, we have to be open. We have to be open to seeing things differently, letting go. You can't take all your baggage when you go on an exploratory journey. You can only take a small pack of your belongings. You can't take everything. So we have to leave some of our comfort behind, and we have to strike out with a bit of uncertainty, but a whole lot of willingness. We don't have to settle in any of the territory that we explore. We just have to have the courage to go on a journey. That's all. So there we go. What do we need to know about love? Getting a little bit of encouragement to go on a journey into a new way of exploring. Okay, in the past, the recent past, we have the Empress. So the Empress is another number 3. We've got 2 3s here. The 3s are about synergy. They are about like creative energy. So there's a tremendous, look at the colors here, like bright, creative. The Empress is the divine feminine. She's the mother energy. And so there's something about reclaiming some aspect of, I want to say, naturalness in our relationship dynamics. Oh my goodness. Look at this. I mean, so far, the brightness. This Knight of Wands in the present, the knights are all about a quest or taking up a challenge of some kind. Taking up a challenge, in this case, the challenge is the challenge of seeing things in a new way, again, it implies a journey. It implies an energetic journey. It implies, being willing to go on a new trajectory. And for those of you that are just joining, I'm speaking about relationships. I'm speaking about interpersonal, I want to say spiritually motivated relationships, right? Relationships that aren't just about, we get together, we're companions, we meet each other's needs, done deal. This is about this is a spiritual, I want to say not contract, but it is a spiritual invitation for growth in new ways. And it is the next thing that is going to be the most significant for our up leveling. And I was just joking. Hi, Frederick. Yeah, 1111. Woohoo! Right? I was just joking about how we can talk about just about anything else, and we're all sort of have our opinions and our experiences. Hi from London. This topic is something that just everybody's kind of I don't know, because we are the generations that are in between the old and new paradigms. And one of the biggest ways that we're going to grow and heal is through new types of relationships, new types of relationships of choice, which include friendships. But the largest, strongest choice that we have, sovereign choice as human beings, is to choose a emotionally and physically intimate relationship for partnership, divine union. And again, it's something we just don't talk about. Or we talk about it with a lot of lament, and we talk about it with a lot of baggage. Relationships have been probably targeted more than anything else in our human evolutionary process by the dark forces, right? Because it is one of the most sacred spiritual, it is the sacred spiritual contract of creation. So if you want to undermine humanity's divinity, relationships are where you divide people, you make it complicated, you make all these power dynamics, you make these really dysfunctional agreements that people are forced into. It's messy stuff, and we've all been hurt by it, and it is old. It's old. Hi, everyone joining in. Thanks for having the courage to be the people that are looking at this. And I brought this topic up, if you weren't here from the beginning, because I just heard news from a client that made my heart literally sing with joy. It's someone that is, not a young person. And this person found someone, they met someone online that just made their heart sing, and they reached out to that person for months, very genuinely, very, not overwhelmingly, just very succinctly, but deep, truly from the heart. And well, with a lot of encouragement from spirit and their guides and, working with me, this is coming into fruition in the most beautiful way imaginable. And it just makes my heart sing. It makes my heart sing to hear really beautiful stories of these are people that are not just going into relationship to have someone there. These are people that have been alone for years and are making these choices. And it takes so much courage because we are stepping beyond those old systems. Yeah. Hi, Susan. Oh, yeah. So can I put your comment up here? Feeling kind of ready to meet a kindred spirit. Tough fighting alone. But nobody's in the same place, right? How many of us feel that way? How many of us feel that way? Yeah. And yet, there's a lot of us feeling that way. And it's not just women. Susan, it's not just women. Yeah. Oh my goodness, look at this. Okay, so the next step is, you know, this is the inner child. This is the most, I want to say, precious, gentle, heart centered character of all the court cards. It's just the absolute most gentle aspect of our hearts. And we think, boy, this part of us is the part we should never let our guard down and let out because it'll just get squashed in this world, right? It's like, it's so precious. It's like the most precious, innocent, beautiful, spirited child. And we just want to lock it up in a, glass cage, right? Because we're so afraid for it in this very overwhelmingly chaotic, intense world, right? And yet, this character has some of the greatest strength in its purity. And I wonder, I'm not sure, I'm not making any big declarations here, but I wonder if it is the time to let this lead. I wonder if we've evolved enough, those of us that are ready for that, like you were saying, Susan, have we evolved enough to allow this to guide us? Mhm. And I can say quite earnestly that I have protected this part of myself for gosh, decades, decades. This is the part of us that kind of leads the charge when we're younger, when teens, 20s, maybe even into our 30s sometimes. And when we were growing up, we were still so deeply woven in the spell of the dark forces, right? That this was not a safe time for this part of us then. Definitely not. It was like we saw what happened with this part of us then, right? It got smashed, it got co-opted, yeah. And interesting what the guides are saying, what our guides are saying to me is that we thought that this part got destroyed. It didn't get destroyed. It's actually indestructible because it is the essence of pure unconditional love. It's a frequency. And you can't break that frequency. You can kind of create complication around it so that it puts it in a kind of holding place. And we chose as a coping mechanism to put this part of ourselves kind of in a type of lockdown, lock-in, but it didn't get destroyed. It's not destroyed. And what I'm seeing here is we are being encouraged to open that door. There's an interesting, I'm going to share this with you. Oh, whew, yeah. Oh, wow. The old system around relationships. Yeah, the old system around relationships is literally coming down. It's literally at the end of its rope. Clearly. Like I'm just getting this, like they're screaming at me. It is done. Which means that, yeah, there's something about reclaiming our right to choose and to even speak about relationships with, like let's look at the words, the etymology around what we agree to in the marriage contracts. I feel like we're redesigning contracts is what we're doing, because they're saying that frequency of, even the words husband and wife, you look it up, check it out, what that means. It's all about landlords and ownership and serfdom and who has, property rights, like the whole thing. is just this ownership. And it's not just man over woman, it's the whole system. Like, once you agree to these vows, the whole system owns you, right? It's like so gross, so gross. And yet, good luck trying to ever kill this. It's indestructible. Folks, this is indestructible. This is pure love. It's the energy, the essence of pure love, period. You cannot destroy it. Impossible. So we've been made to believe that this is destroyed. You know, just look at how much effort has gone into trying to take that power and twist it, right? Like, young people often have this innocence really strong, and look at how the cabal and the media and everything, trying to hijack this very beautiful quality, purity, essence of love and turn it into a monster, right? So if so much as effort has been put into controlling this energy, what does that tell you? It is divinity. It is the spark of creation. It is literally the God spark. And what we do with that, how we employ that to fulfill the greatest version of our destiny, is absolutely in our grasp. According to these cards, this old system is toast. Yeah. So, well, this is fun. Susan. Okay. Wise woman. Counting on meeting someone I can start my quantum academy with, blending ancient and new. I'm going to put that up there. Where are we, Susan? Thank you for your ancient and new to heal our bodies, minds, and souls, bringing nature back into our lives. Love it. Love it. Okay, let's look at Ricky's comment. I've stopped looking for a woman to have a long-term relationship with because it seems like the harder I look, the more I attract women that just want to look. So I am just letting it happen. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of all women. And stay strong, my friend. Stay strong in your warrior heart, because it is so much more than what we've been shown. It is so much more mysterious and magical. And I really do believe, I don't necessarily believe in soulmates the way that New Age narrative has been kind of sold to us. I believe that there are potentially a small percentage of people on the planet that could be energetically, frequency, chemistry, soul, destiny, karmically beautiful matches for us. But it's a small percentage, very, very small. One time I was channeling years ago, and I heard 6 people on average that on the whole planet at any given time that would resonate with us like that. So if you apply those laws of attraction, 6 degrees of separation and so on, I mean, the odds of you meeting one of those people and it lining up for timing with both of you as well, right? Because they could also be in that looking uncertain, settling for something because they are so lonely and there's so much tragedy around. And so it is often a real long game. It's often a real long game of patience and staying true to your own evolution and your own soul. It's interesting when I see this 3 of Wands, because this to me looks like, what we're really wanting to do, it's not so much about, people get sort of, uh, they get concerned. I got to get out and meet someone, right? Like this person that I was talking about actually met someone online. Not always a good idea. In fact, I don't highly recommend it most of the time. However, there's a portion of my clients when they come and I see a lot of times this card. This card is, among other things, it's related to the technology, this magician, the technology and the ability to communicate with people online from different parts of the world. So there we go. you know and there have been some real miracles that have come where people have found each other through those platforms. They have found other awake people. They have found people with similar spiritual values. So, and one of the things that's good about those platforms is that that the people that are there, a lot of them, let's face it, we've all heard the horror stories too, but keep your frequency high, because if you're in that frequency, you're not going to attract those, what do they call them? Catfish, trolls, whatever. You're not going to attract that. So it's a fine line. And I feel like what this Explorer card is talking about, it's talking about exploring the ability, because one thing this person did that I'm speaking about, this client did, is they had an absolute, I think it's okay to disclose this there. You're never going to know who this is, but they literally had a picture. They like created an image of the person, and this person fits that image. Like, it is so incredible. It's so incredible. Like, they felt into their heart and felt someone. And when they saw them online a few months later, they couldn't even believe it. And I knew because I had seen the original picture, and then I saw the person and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like what you see on those those ads about I'll draw your soulmate kind of things, right? But I mean, this is what we're talking about. It's about it isn't about you have to draw the image of the person that you imagine, but it is about, like, it's that kind of frequency of divine spark of, like, there's something spiritual going on here. This is an extraordinary thing. And I have one more quick story to share with you about this. Let's look at the sidebars. Oh boy. Okay, we're all just so scared. We're all just so scared to take a step in any direction. Let's see how we work with that. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to be working on is creating sovereignty right from the first minute. So sovereignty is going to be a really big part of the equation. And the more we learn about our own sovereignty, then we can approach relationships with a completely new template, right? You can go nice and slow. You can start with, declarations around sovereignty. It doesn't have to be like offensive and critical and standoffish. It can be very welcoming, but it's all based on consent. It's all based on consent and honesty, commitment to taking your time to get to know each other. And it has to start with the frequency being such a good match that you're like, okay, I'm willing to let this person in. Okay, so here's a little analogy that's come through many of my sessions over the years, and it's about how we open to relationship. I think women especially, and some men too, we weren't taught how to do this very well. And so we have this, like, we open to someone and it's like we let them right into our heart. We let them right in instantly. It's like they're right in and they're totally affecting us, throwing us into a tizzy right from the get-go. And we're building stories of a future immediately. Okay. So what we can do to reframe this approach is to literally have the analogy of almost like a corral, like a circular corral with a bunch of concentric gates and rings. Okay. So the outer corral, you let someone in, you're like, oh my gosh, they fit the description, or I really feel this high frequency resonance. There's a deep connection. I want to trust this person. That's how you know you're going to start. But you're not going to let them all the way in right away. You're going to let them into the outer ring. And so the outer ring is where you just enjoy getting to know each other. It's playful. It's fun. It's the tell me your stories, I'll tell you mine. It's the, oh, we have this in common. We like to do these things. Let's hang out. Let's have some fun. And you stay in that till there's that magic time. And obviously, if it's a long distance thing, it takes a little longer. But there's usually a time where everybody's at that point where it's like it's either going to go, it starts to fizzle out, and you're like, okay, I think that was just that, wasn't meant to go any further. Or you see a bunch of red flags. If you are in that and you're like, okay, so far, okay, pretty good, then you open the next corral up. Now, the next corral is where you actually really dig. You go in and you observe this person, not just with your fluttering romantic heart, but you really observe them. You observe them, how they handle stress. You maybe even test the connection a little. You take on something together that could put you into stress. You tackle a project together to see how you work together. Go on a trip that is maybe a little bit challenging or something, right? And by seeing how you operate together under stress, how compatible you are, that tells you so much about where the relationship can go. And if you're in that zone and whatever you've tested each other with has drawn you closer, then and only then do you open the final gate into your deepest heart, your deepest willingness to make a serious long-term commitment. So this is something I think that would give men a lot of ease as well, knowing that women are going through this process with them, and not just, I think, for a lot of men, it's hard that women just throw themselves in fully at the beginning, and it comes as a lot of pressure, right? To suddenly fulfill all these things that you didn't even know you were agreeing to. So I'm not just saying women do that. Men do that too. Some men do it right away as well. And there's no shame in any of this, folks. This comes from being traumatized and wounded as human beings who've been overpowered and basically living in a slavery type system for a really long time. So my rant is complete. Let's go to some questions. Where are we at? Have we got any questions coming up? Okay. Thank you, Susan. You had a vision. Healing would come from Asia, Russia, and found Wuhan once was the world's hub of herbs and natural healing. Will it be that once more? Wow. Oh my goodness. That is an extraordinary question. I'm going to actually look at the two places separately. So let's start with Asia. Let's start with Wuhan and Asia. And then let's go to Russia. Okay. Whew. Have to say, when I'm talking about the topic of love, I always end up sweating. It creates some anxiety, doesn't it, in all of us? Yeah, it's a little bit anxiety producing, but that's okay. It's worth it because it's the most significant thing that we do with our sovereign choice in this lifetime is choose who we're going to love. So close that off and let's look at Asia. Let's look at Wuhan. Let's look at how this place of traditional Chinese medicine was co-opted. Like, isn't it interesting, right? The portals on the planet where certain things, oh yeah, look at that. Absolutely being used by dark force energy. All the good was capitalized on initially. You know, I heard this kind of little statement this morning. Sometimes when I wake up, I have like a morning meditation and I hear all these little bits of wisdom that must have come in through my dream time or something. And I heard that, what was it? It was something about greed. But basically, greed destroys not only the people who've been exploited. In fact, it's more destructive to the ones who have exploited. So it sets up this cycle of sickness. And it is a sickness. Greed is a sickness. It's like kind of starving on some level is what I'm hearing. Okay, let's go to, what do we need to know about Asia and Wuhan in particular? Will it be again? Well, certainly the energy there has been put on hold, similar to what I was saying about that pure essence of love. It cannot be destroyed. So this is one of the things that I've learned about energy over the years that I find really comforting, is that light energy cannot be attacked. It can't be destroyed. The frequency of light sustains that energy of the pure essence. It remains, it just is hidden. And it takes a lot of dark force energy to hide it. Dark force energy always, it isn't self-sustaining. It always has to feed on something. So it's always needing to do a lot of work to stay relevant, is what I'm hearing. So this energy of that part of the world, all the wisdom, all the healing, it's still there. It's still in the land. It's still retained. There's like a portal of energy there. Will it come back? Well, people are going to need to have a little bit more. I'd say we're 80% of the way along the story of its destruction, but not destruction, right? Let's call it distraction. We've been distracted from the pure essence there. We're about 80% of the way along that journey. So there's going to be a little bit more of the overlay. Let's look in the past. Oh yeah, the sages, the wise ones. And really, I mean, Asia, you know, places like Tibet, for example, these are places where, you know, spiritual wisdom stayed alive going into the dark ages that we've gone through, right? If you follow the Kali Yuga cycle, we go through all the different yugas from the golden age, silver, bronze, and then into the dark iron age. And then we come back out of that cycle, and the whole thing takes, you know, over 20,000 years to complete. Well, about 9,000 years ago, the continent and the part of the continent where Asia is took a lot of the wisdom and protected it, kept it sacred there. And had to hold it in that sacred way to protect it. And that's why a lot of those places and traditions were so surrounded by mystery, is that they had to protect, because all through those dark ages, some aspect of that wisdom had to stay alive and relevant. I wish that we were further along. Let's see what is right here. Yeah, so there is still, it's going to take some time to dismantle the power dominant structure that's been laid over that part of the world. And yeah, interesting. I always say, if you want to learn more about Asia, there's two things that I recommend. I highly recommend. I think that everyone alive on planet Earth should see these or observe or learn from these two sources. One of them is a really powerful documentary. It used to be on Knowledge Network a few years ago. It's really hard to find it online now. I wonder why that is. It's called Empires of Silver, and it is a documentary about the history in Asia and how and why it became the part of the world that was so fixated on, the influences of things like communism and these very controlling systems, the technology, the co-opting of those technologies for purposes of controlling, all of that. It has a history, and this series, Empires of Silver, tells that history beautifully. The other thing, if you ever want to learn more about what happened in China during the era of the Communist Revolution, there's a really phenomenal novel called Wild Swans. It is actually banned in China still to this day, and it gives the painfully precise narrative of literally month by month by month what happened over basically a 60 or 70-year period in China. And I highly recommend reading it. It's written by a woman, and it's told by a female perspective. And it's the story of this woman's mother and grandmother and herself. So it's 3 generations of women, and it's the whole narrative of the Communist Revolution told from that perspective. Really fascinating. Difficult in a way to read because there's just so much information, and you're like, oh my gosh, what these people have been through. So yeah, it's going to take some time to turn this around, because they are dug in very, 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 very deep. And it feels like that portal needs to be protected. But we start by informing ourselves. Look at that, what I just talked about. I'll put a link to both of those things. I don't know where you can find the Empires of Silver documentary, but I'll put a link to where I can find it. And hopefully you can access that from your computer as well. And then also to the book, Wild Swans, because if you want to know more about Asia, and I think we should all know more about Asia because it is going to be very relevant for the rest of our lives. Those are some sources. And there we go. The Page of Swords is about learning, getting new information. That's our next step. And what do we need to be aware of? Yeah. I mean, I love this. You're talking about reinstating this beautiful energy of healing wisdom. And there we have the Knight of Cups. It's all about the heart, moving forward with that dedication beyond. Yeah. Like, if we look back at China and Asia, even over the last 500 years, and see how that part of the world was treated by the rest of the world, wow. There's some real healing to do there, folks. There's some real healing to do there. But it's going to be worth it, because there's so much latent wisdom that still remains there, and we will benefit from this being available to us down the road by going through this challenge of uncovering this information and doing the healing work necessary to open that up again in a good way. So it's kind of big, but it's amazing. Pretty amazing. Thanks for the beautiful question. And let's look at, all right. Yeah. Oh, there's so many questions coming in now. I'll hang in there a while longer. We'll see what we can get through. I want to talk about Russia. Oh boy. Russia's another one of those places. Yep. Wow, so complex, right? Such a complex place. Some of the greatest, you know, the Russian language, right? It's still an indigenous language. And what I mean by that is it still has this energy of not being all the Indo-European derived languages have separate self as their core, right? I am this, you are that, we're separate. The Russian language still has the energy of connectivity at its core. So that's an interesting riddle. And, you know, it's partly why for the Russian population, it's easy to persuade people to think in terms of the group as opposed to the individual, because it's literally in their language. It's how they refer to themselves. If you look at their language, that separation, individuation is nowhere near as prevalent as it is in all of our Indo-European derived languages, which is basically all of the European languages of the Middle East, India. Yeah, so Russia is unique in that way. And there's a strength in that. There's a strength in their massive continent, right? With all these resources. And we know that Edgar Cayce talked about the next earthly representative of Christ consciousness would emerge from Russia. Edgar Cayce, for those of you that don't know, a phenomenal, intuitive channel, mystic, and, you know, predicted all kinds of extraordinary things, was an amazing mystical healer as well. And so there's something in that. Rudolf Steiner, the creator of the Anthroposophical movement, also, you know, a divine mystic in his own right. He talked about Christ consciousness emerging from Russia. So we're looking at a very complicated scenario here. Let's see what role Russia, and when I talk about it, the guides are saying, think about it not so much as the nation and the political governing bodies. Think of it as a collective ideology and a land. So in that regard, what a gift. What a gift to the world. Boy, another thing that we're going to have to do a lot of homework to figure out how to untangle this, because it's all tangled up. It's so interesting, right? Because there's so much, what I see here is there's so much exploitation has been done, similar to what happens in Canada, right? Because we have this massive continent and all these natural resources that have been exploited beyond the beyond. It's like, okay, when you basically drain the barrel and there's nothing left, then everybody's hungry. How can you have a continent that's so lush and potentially so productive, so vast with all these resources. And you end up, people are living impoverished. That's what I'm getting about Russia. We have people with all of that land and resource. Everybody should be like living like, you know, so abundantly. Why are they not? Right? Exploitation, greed, it's that sickness. Okay. We're looking at also, this to me feels like the whole question with nuclear energy and the space programs, right? I mean, Russia is no small energy on the planet, right? Big fiery energy carries a big stick. I mean, it's like, yes, definitely not a country to mess around with. Okay, and look at this. Going through such an existential crisis, heartbreak, sorrow, tragedy. Look at this. Unbelievable. So, what's next? All right, another sword. Remember we had for China, we had the Page of Swords. And for Russia, we've got another ace, 2 aces. So likely we're going to get clear on Russia sooner than China is what I'm getting. And when I say get clear on, what I mean is there is still the potentiality here, and this could be something to do with Christ consciousness coming in, and that could be coming in soon because of these 2 aces. So we could see Russia leading us out of the greed sickness, because they've definitely bottomed out. It's sort of like the unhappy soul that inherited, you often hear about those aristocracy. Usually it was young men that inherited all this stuff, and they just were so unfulfilled in their souls. They'd been raised in such a dark frequency of greed and power and dominance, and they just didn't know their own souls at all. They had no kind of inner integrity, and they just squandered everything. That's what this feels like to me. Russia's just squandered itself, and it's really a tragedy because it can be rebuilt. But I would say that's going to take some time, maybe even 3 generations or more to rebuild back to such an extraordinary resource base, maybe even 5 generations. But here's us kind of waiting for something. Look at all the swords. So they're saying almost like similarly, what we were seeing with China, I feel like learning more about Russian history would be really valuable. Look at this. King of Swords, Ace of Swords. Swords are thoughts and ideas. So knowing more how to support this part of the world in coming back into balance, so that Christ energy, if it is coming through there, if that's where it's sort of coming in this time around, we can help create a place for it to grow, is what I'm being shown. Oh, look, and there's that little energy of the innocence at the 9th hour. The purity that still remains in the hearts of the people in those lands saves the day, is what I'm getting, and meets that Christ consciousness energy. Well, and this gets into, we talk about the Anastasia series, if any of you are familiar with that, the Ringing Cedar series. And this is a phenomenal book of, I guess there's 8 volumes or 9 volumes or something like that, and it comes out of Russia. I think they were written in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I've read the whole thing. I read it a lot of years ago. It's definitely worth a reread, and it's a lot about reclaiming the land through creating these what the character in this series calls natural domains. She calls them kins domains, and it's all about everyone creating on a little piece of land, 3 to 5 acres of land, each family creating a paradise on earth. And that as we do that, like a patchwork, we begin to raise the frequency of our planet. And ultimately, that has such a healing effect on our hearts, on the spirits of the land, on our, it connects us with our greater new earth destiny and so on. And there's so many of those communities in Russia, and they were actually established based on this energy of an earlier model, which was called the dashniks. And the dashniks were basically these garden plots that all the citizens of Russia had the opportunity to receive a small plot in a rural location to farm and produce food. And it did so much for the food resource in their country. So it was like a big part of their their value, their national wealth was coming from this food resource that people were producing in their own plots. So this idea of a kins domain is basically the next step from that. And many people in Russia have adopted this model and started forming these little communities. Very humble, right? This is very humble. This isn't about we're going to force people to do what we're doing. It's just we're going to look after our own sovereign needs, and we're going to create things in a new way. And we're going to roll up our sleeves and literally get to work and growing our own food. So there we go. Russia, China, another long-winded narrative from Ashala. My apologies for that. Okay, let us look at, okay, Sylvia's asking about when will the truth come out about the big, you know what, the jabs. Okay. And Yorkie channels that keep doing readings on financials are suspicious to me. Okay, I'm going to cover those two, and then I think we'll call it a day because I've got some readings to do for people. So Sylvia, let's go with your question. This is such a good question. I'm wondering the same thing. I've looked at it before. Look at that. I opened the deck. Ooh. It's kind of reminding me that, yeah, it's interesting because I got similarly as what we saw about, I guess it was about the China piece that we're 80% of the way there. I'm seeing that. I just saw the 80% card again, and that's pretty discouraging, but let's talk about that last 20%, right? If you know about the laws of physics and stuff, it's a momentum thing, right? It takes a lot of energy to get to the 80. That last 20 could take forever, or it could happen like that. So I think that's where we're at, folks. Why both of those questions show up with 80% of the way there. I think it's because we're at a juncture where it could really happen fast, lightning fast, but it's kind of like it's going to be right to that point, and then all of a sudden it's going to flip, is what I'm seeing. And interestingly, for some reason, I am reminded about, I really love watching Pam Gregory. For those of you that don't know, she is an astrologer. She's amazing. She lives in the UK. And something that she said, she's awake and wonderful and wise. Something she said really caught my attention, because I've been going like, oh my gosh, you astrologers, like, can you hear how it sounds for us on the listening end? It's just like, oh, it's never been so intense. Oh, it's going to get worse. Oh, wait till next year this time. You think it's bad now. We're all just going like, no, we can't handle anymore, right? And I've been like, kind of ear to the wall, please give us a bit of hope that something is going to turn around, please. Like, I just keep hearing it getting more and more and more and more intense, right? So interesting. She gave that clue. And she talked about, now I'm sorry, I'm not an astrologer, don't know exactly which planet this was, but it was something related to the way that this health crisis was manufactured, and how this, did two things. On the one hand, it brought us up against the reality of how in a web of machination of control we are. And secondly, it also brought up our ire to say, we don't want that anymore. We're not going to stand for that, right? So it opened our eyes, and then it lit our spark to push back. She said, whatever that planet was, it's going to do its last swing, really. And she said the last swing, they call it the anaretic degree or something, is the worst. It's the worst sting. It's like the sting at the end of the scorpion tail, right? And it's going to do that between now and I think it's the end of November of this year. But she said it's really hollow. It's like, you just don't buy into it. Like, don't, it's going to look worse. It's going to be just like this big, like, rah, like the last death cry of that system trying to manipulate us using those tactics. And then it switches out of that by the end of November of this year, and it's out of it for 250 years. It's just like game over for them. So I guess what I'm seeing and sensing with all of this is that we're going to have one last big scream from that side, and it's probably going to look worse and scarier than it did, 4.5 years ago. And then it's over. So let that illuminate. This looks great. This looks great. We're going to slide right through this. No problem. Okay. I'm hearing 40% of us are going to slide through that, which is probably more than what there was the first time. A lot more people are coming on board, and they're going to go, wait a minute, this sounds like that. And we saw that so much of that was more hype than it needed to be. So we're going to get 40% on board right away as we go through this fall over the next 4 months. That's their last rah, right? And by 9 months, 90% are going to be aware and awake. So this is it. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Yeah, look at that. Waiting. We want to let this happen again. And the reason for that is because it has to be exposed to the remaining people. Yeah, I'm actually we've still got 60% of the population that could be swayed the wrong way. However, this time, they're going to get to the point we got to last time. At least, let's say 50%, or not 50, but if we got 60%, yeah, that 50 of them, because we're going to end up with 90. 10% will just never get it. And that's okay, because we've got more than enough energy to rebuild on 90 for sure, right? 40 is a little weak, but 90, we're going to do great. So yeah, let it roll. Let it roll, folks. Let it roll. Don't get psyched out. Don't get psyched out, okay? Yeah, don't bite the hook. Don't be like, oh my God, I can't handle another round of this. Don't do it. Like, stick with this. Just be like, we're getting through this, and it's the last. It's the last. And it needs to be. It needs to be the last, and it needs to be the biggest. Whew. Okay. Getting fired up this morning. Wow. Last question. Channels doing. Thank you for your question, Sylvia. And thank you for your question, Yorkie fam. Channels that keep doing readings on financials are suspicious. Not sure how we unify when we keep focusing on financials so much. All right. Well, this is a great perspective. Yeah, there's still an energy of how do we win at the old game, right? That's what I see when we focus on financials so much. How do we win at the old game? It's kind of like, the diehards at the card table. Let's just play another round. I got some new coins. Let's play another round. It's like, okay, well, what I know about the financials is that we do need some transitional options. I'm really suspicious of there being one solution. Okay. If it's a government representative that's going to save us, a new government system that's going to save us, if it's a particular type of crypto or digital currency that's going to save us, if it's, a certain foreign currency that's going to save us. Like, if I really want to move into, this is a time of diverse options. Isn't that amazing? Right? Like, think about it. Think about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. If we were faced with the collapsing of the old economy, what other options did we have? We didn't have cryptocurrency. People weren't aware about buying gold and silver very much. We had the stock market and we had the currencies of our nation, the petrodollar. So we are in a beautiful place to transition and not be so controlled by one currency option. Okay. And people say to me, yeah, but how am I going to sell my gold and silver and like get money for it if the system's gone? And I'm like, you don't. You trade it. You trade it for the things you need. That's why silver is great for trading and gold holds its value. Gold will hold its value. Silver will do more of this. So if you're trying to make money on silver, not so great. But silver's so tradable because you can have a small amount of silver and go buy your groceries with it. Probably not from a major grocery chain, but definitely from farmers up your street. Okay. Same with cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, you can buy things from people across the planet, right? So let's look. Financials, what do we focus on? We focus on feeling that we are fortunate that we are living in a time when there's so many transitional options, and we keep going beyond these options. This is what I have been saying. I actually visualize us going into a time where we are trading on true value, our true value. And I'm going to be teaching courses on this. I haven't got the go ahead from Spirit, and I really haven't had the time to organize and produce these courses, but I'm calling it the personal value statement, and it's going to be something that we can literally barter with. And I'll explain more about that in the weeks and months ahead. It feels a little bit almost like too out there for a lot of people, but when the time is right, it will slip into line with all these other transitional options, and eventually, maybe 6 or 7 years down the road, become a predominant method of exchanging. So we're going in the right direction. Keep the ideas flowing. Keep the ideas of diverse options flowing. Yeah, we're already out of the woods. We're already out of the woods, and it really is about it. We're still in the mind, in the old limited systems, but they're saying just get out and start spending these new transitional currencies. Like, start trading now in these currencies. I'm saying it, and I'm like, yeah, I got to revamp my website so that I'm accepting cryptocurrency. End of story. Like, time to do it. And so may it be. And let's get trading. Oh my gosh, another ace. Yeah. Let's have fun doing this. It's a little bit like playing Monopoly in a way, right? We're like, can we really just trade this stuff? Like these silver coins? Can I really give you one of those? Why not? Why not? Yeah. So it's, yeah, interesting. This is kind of where we started today, right? We started around this. The Hermit is the energy of inner wisdom, inner guidance. And I think the value, it's also a number 9, and 9 is about sovereignty. So the value is going to be that there's no one size fits all here. You're going to explore and work with transitional currencies. I keep calling them that because we don't know how we're going to be trading like 50, 60 years from now. We may not need a lot of these things at that point, but we're certainly not going to be in some sort of social credit system with, top down, power dominant, government issued points in our account. This is going to be, everyone is going to do it their own way that suits their needs. And it's just as much about teaching us how to be sovereign and look up after ourselves. What we're really learning is about, I love Nomad Capitalist. He's awake, and he calls it the nanny states, right? We're the nanny nations, where we've been basically coddled by our governments. And it's going to be an act of sovereign reclamation to say, I'm going to design my own financial system. I'm going to design my own networks. Maybe these things I buy online and I pay with my own cryptocurrencies. These things I buy from my neighbors and I pay with gold and silver. Maybe these things I buy through my circle of friends and I pay with my personal value statement, which is going to be an interesting thing to talk about. Like, there's going to be a lot of ways to work with money in the future. So, yep. Oh, wow. Yeah, I just love it that it's going to move from being one system into a diverse array of systems, and it does get more complicated, right? It's like going and buying your one thing from one grocery store and one thing from another. I know that's frustrating. I know we've become quite dependent on one-stop shop, flip your card down. It's super easy, but that so-called luxury of convenience has cost us. It's cost us a lot. And it's made us, kind of unconscious, even in how we spend money and how we expect to have our, instant gratification. I want this. I mean, I think about this stuff. When I've gone and lived remotely or lived off grid, it's a pretty big deal when you can only go shopping once a month. And you're having a craving for whatever your favorite kind of chips is at like 10 o'clock at night. And you're like, oh my God, where's the delivery? Where's the corner store, right? But it's like, no, eventually you get used to it not being that way. And it's no big deal. It's no big deal. We can get over that. And it's a maturing, it's coming back into like this deeper part of ourselves. So requires a lot more strategy, right? This is a strategy card. It requires a lot more strategy. Well, you've had an hour and almost 17 minutes of me talking about all these things. And I hope that some of this, I really pray that some of this really is resonating in your heart. And if it's not, that's okay. Just pass on, pass along to the next thing. I look forward to seeing you here next week. I think maybe it's all three of us next week. Not exactly sure, but whoever's on, we'll look forward to meeting you here again then. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Bye for now.